So, Aurum Gallery, all you wonderful art collectors and art lovers, I'm here with the infamous Mr. Marley Mcfly, who I got to know vicariously through my good friend John Mathos, better known as Crash. And you have your own story to tell on Crash and the influence this man's had.
Definitely.
I mean, Jesus, you know, Crash, one of the first pieces we sold in the gallery when we opened. And, you know, Crash's impact. I mean, it's hard to quantum. You can quantum Lean, Futura, you know, Lenny and Crash in the same breath.
Definitely.
So, Marley, number one, we are really grateful and very happy to have you as part of the Aurum family. I know it was kind of quick. It was painless, to say the least.
Right. That's how I like it.
So you're in Virginia.
Yes.
And weirdly enough, I was looking today, because obviously we're back and forth. I'm in Phuket now in the south of Thailand.
Okay.
And I was looking, because the gallery's like an hour on the plane. You get there, it's an hour away. And we get up there. The piece in particular, the pieces that we have, I found that the influence, it comes from lots of different areas. You know, for me, I was very into Lichtenstein when I was growing up. You know, Dinsky, you know, and also what Crash has done as an influence. And tell me how that came about. What is it? Did you come from the graphic world? Were you already a graffiti writer that moved into contemporary? Were you just none of those things? Tell me your story, how that works for you.
I was actually none of those things. Just growing up, Lichtenstein was the first time I understood what I was seeing in art. It's like those are comics that I grew up on. That was things that, you know, was my interest. So I would go on field trips as a kid and first grade, and the fine art was just boring to me. I didn't understand it. But every time I would enter that room and see a Lichtenstein or even a Warhol, I was like, those are characters I relate to. I know what that means. And then as I got older, I always had just the ability to draw. I would draw on anything, just walls, desks, anything.
You name it.
You name it. Crash was the first time I saw, you know, the same stuff I would see outside, just outside walking, playing on buildings in a gallery. So that was cool. It kind of opened it up. I was like, oh, there's possibilities for someone who does what I do to be viewed in that same light as these fine artists that I'm always been told about in school that I have no interest in.
Well, what's great about Crash is that he will cite young guns coming up, and you've been around a minute. But what I love about Crash is that the music industry is quick to shut down other people because it's like, yo, we don't, you know what I'm saying? It's like that.
Yeah.
There's this welcoming, especially with that generation, where I spoke to John about this in detail a while back, and it was the idea of how this, you know, back then the environment was so hostile that to be able to share your art with people that are like-minded, to create the family, is a beautiful thing. And I mean, for me, it's almost like you can see the tree of what he's done, and you see this extension, and you can see certain artists, and I see you as that artist where there's a massive influence there, but very welcoming. I mean, did you get to meet him? Did you get to speak to him a lot? How did that happen? How did this happen, this relationship?
We speak a lot. It's funny, our first interaction, because I've always been a fan, always had an influence. So I followed him on Instagram, and he followed me right back and just reached out. And like I said, it was weird to me because, you know, I'm a fan. I'm starstruck. That's my guy. But to see that him following back, love my work, he's a fan of mine as well.
Yeah,
that was very welcoming. That's not something you get every day.
Especially being a young. You get every day. It's not something you get, and especially with embracing that. And I guess that catalyst, really, for any artist, you know what it's like. We put the work out there. We don't care, but we kind of do in a really, you know what I mean? But we also in the point where we're like, you know what? We're so alienated that we actually don't fuck about what's going on with it. We just let
That's exactly what it is.
And that's what it is. I see you got a wonderful piece there behind you. Is that a new piece you got rocking out there?
Yeah, that's new.
Nice. So. I like that. You got a semi-tag thing creeping in there. I love, because the whole, one of the things that I realized about Lichtenstein and about your work and about Crash's work, and the idea of the dots and the idea of how a television would look. I remember standing up next to a television when I was a kid. and I just see just dots, like right next to the screen.
Right.
And now I look at the TV, and it's just lines. And I look at what I'm doing with the halftone stuff, and I look at what Helio's doing. We're very similar.
Right.
What Wagstaffy's doing the same kind of line work. I always thought that obviously line and technology would change, and those lines did change in the way that we went from analog to digital. But I guess the media world, the way of how these dots placed and moving and pixelate, instead of pixelation being these round dots. Was it something that for you, was it a Freudian moment? Was it something that was just based on Lichtenstein? Or was it something where you think, okay, that's that, and it's a different thing, but you're looking at overlaying and layers, and is it something that you think was in the world of capitalism, advertising, just all this information coming at you? What was the things that really
That's exactly what.
Crash?
Yeah, like I said,
What was
outside before art, my background was in advertising and sales. So a lot of that, just those moving parts, seeing ads thrown at me all day, me trying to sell people ads, a lot of that plays a role in it as well. That's where you get that overlapping. And then the dots and kind of the layering and the bleeding through of different colors. That was kind of the way we would print different ads for like magazines and newspapers, and like the pages would bleed once we've done it so many times. That's why my art, there's still that ruggedness where it's like different parts are being broken up, because I like that look of when like the printer's running low on ink and the pages are kind of bleeding together.
Yeah. I always love that idea of when you got canvas, even if it's canvas, whatever medium working on, you get the sander out and give it that worn look, and it's
Right.
that where the world's changed. Like 20 years ago, I would have took those jeans back and it said, "Give me my money back. These got a hole in them." Now it's like,
right. I needed more.
But that's what I love about the barbarian aspect that street art, whichever way they want to cut it up, whichever they want to call it, it's massively. Where do the adults go? They go to the cult. It's always got to go to the culture.
Right.
I think now there's so many people like yourself that grew up in a graphic world. They go, yeah, well, here's the thing. Let me spin it around. I mean, the pieces we have at Aurum Gallery, I love it because our ethos is about having like a museum type mentality.
Right.
First thing people say when they come in that space is, geez, this is huge. It's massive. It's space in this place. Because it is, it's, high ceilings, 2 big warehouse spaces, a full-length train.
Right.
What we like about it is that sitting with the art, we can download the music, we can download all these images, but there's something about sitting with your images or Crash's images or Bio's images and just being there in the space, and there's no one else around. And I find that I used to get that from museums. I saw the Warhol show in Canada in Montreal, and I went there on a Tuesday morning, and it was just like being in a room with that art. You can't download it.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And I think what's great about this work that you're doing is that, like you said, the rawness, printer being out of ink, these kind of crazy cross-hatched images. It's like our whole lives are in film now, like video or capturing a meme, whatever it is.
Right.
It's that slow photograph of time. But have you found it? You started off, when did you actually really start going, right, I'm painting my own stuff here? You came out of or you stayed with advertising? How did that work?
Around 2011, I was still doing both. So around 2015, that's when it's like, this is it. Art or bust. Like that. Wow. That's it. So.
Wow. And what did your folks think? Because there's always that thing, you think about what these guys are doing.
I've been through so many jobs where it's like, my mom knows if I don't like it, I'm moving on to the next thing. So she's like, I'm just happy that has been the one consistent thing since you've been a child. Art, drawing on things.
Wow.
Handwriting sucks because when everybody else was doing their handwriting, I was drawing Batman logos. So she's like, that is the one consistency in your life. Go for it.
And how does it demographically work for you? Because you're in Virginia, which is, for me, most of my artists are in, New York, LA, South America, Berlin, the kind of usual hotspots. So Virginia, I don't really know for any got people out there that are watching these Aurum interviews that love following art. obviously it comes from anywhere. But what is Virginia like on for you as an artist, as a young, young artist working there?
I say being from Virginia, I tied a lot of Virginia's music scene into my work. Pharrell, the Neptune, has been a big influence because
tunes are from Virginia. Of course they are. Yeah.
right.
God, yeah.
So the same way they kind of, these were guys, when I grew up, I'm used to, the traditional hip hop look. And then you see Pharrell, this guy in a pink polo shirt.
Yeah.
The way he mixed different things together that you normally wouldn't mix together to create music is the same thought process I had with art. Where it's like,
it's a bit like Americanism. It's a bit like Americanism where you go, well, it's West Coast or East Coast. And,
right.
UK is very much like that. Like it's always mixing cultures together, always.
Right.
So I guess when you got Virginia, it's in the middle, it's like all of this stuff is just everywhere.
It's around everything. It's kind of a sponge because it's around all the other hot spots. You got, Maryland, you got Philly, you got New York, and we're kind of that sponge that just takes a little of everything and create our own out of it.
That's very much like that little island we call England. But I mean, the idea of Thailand for us and the idea of it being, a new contemporary gallery, it's one of the largest in Bangkok for sure, in Thailand. And it's we have a great client base. We have a great set of, young and old, but it's great the amount of attraction we have on this art that would not necessarily be in this country. Because usually it would, hops over and it goes to China and it goes to, different galleries there. Right. But, there's a new generation coming up. And that's what I love about your material, your work, is that as much as I can cite Crash as a major influence, I see Mcfly very clearly. But I actually see this thing which is very unique in your own way. But even this new stuff, it's like you just gone zoomed in a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like you've got this, I think one thing I'm looking at with many artists in the way that they're becoming the Max. They're having the capability to zoom in and zoom out and crop stuff differently and rework things. I think that's what Warhol's legacy was, right? Was the idea of repeat and change and come in. And it's just, and I think that's like anything melodic that we like in music is usually because it's got something that we can attach ourselves to. But
right.
But I love the contribution that you've made for the gallery, and I'm hoping, we were going to have a collective coming here in the winter, and of course, COVID came, and we all had to really dig deep on mental issues and where we're at with the world and how do we operate as artists. And I've got different platforms like Artsy works really well for us.
Right,
got a really good following with that. But just generally, also a time of experimentation as well, I think, for a lot of artists.
A lot of art, yes.
But how do you find you can just go into are you like a night guy painting? Are you a day? Are you just pretty much data like a 9 to 5 for you?
I think I do my best work at night. Because that's when I'm up, I'm thinking, because a lot of the final product you see that's literally how my mind moves. It's just stuff all over the place. And I'm just pretty much mental vomit, so any thoughts I'm having, any mental issues, any, life lessons, relationship problems, that's all going straight on the canvas the same way I'm seeing it in my head.
I saw you screen printing, because obviously I come from a screen printing background, and
right.
Obviously screen printing, that you got to cure the inks and all that kind of stuff, and obviously they put them under UVs and cure them. In that field of working with are you working with like air drying inks? Are you working with what are you working with material wise? Because obviously screen printing, are you exposing your own screens? Are you going through the whole process? You know what I mean?
I go through the whole process of exposing myself with the UV. I do it real raw, where I'll use the sun. That way I'm getting the exposed screen. It's not perfect. It's still kind of broken up.
Still broken. You know what I'm thinking about? When I was really young working in a t-shirt factory, we used to get the red film that you had to cut out and peel off.
Yeah.
And that's that's going back 25, 30 years, right? I mean, it must have come on heaps and bounds. Of course, I've been involved in lots of other screen printing things in one-off pieces with paper and everything else. But I mean, that whole world's changed now. The inks are different. You're getting different screens that you can expose to sunlight, and it's a lot more homemade now, right?
Yes, definitely. It has a homemade kind of crafty look to it now, where pretty much anyone who wants to experiment with it, there's really not a lot of margin for error. It's pretty self-explanatory now.
What is your plan then for the next? Obviously now we're coming out of lockdown. I think the US is getting back on its feet.
US is getting back to normal, like
getting back
everything back up.
What is your? Are you doing a lot of outdoor stuff? Are you doing a lot of commission wise, wall wise? What's the McFly plan for this year?
I'm getting back to showing in front of people. I think that was the biggest thing that was missing last year. Like even when I did walls last year, there may be one or two people walking by, but I didn't get that person who would just stop and ask questions or actually interact with me because they were so scared. Where it's like they would stand back.
I had a conversation with David Speed today, and he said when lockdown happened in England, David Speed's doing the kind of fluorescent stuff and two color. He was saying that, people just cross the street, like, somebody took some set of cans out. It's like, whoa, people get really, kind of, they get their backs up a little bit. Like they fear that, it's,
right.
I mean, there's a change out in him because he said now he's back out there and there's people around. People are stopping asking questions and they are interested.
Right.
It's not just like, some thugged out guy with cans, just tagging up, but he's really enjoying that aspect. And a lot of artists are doing that same thing where, 20 years ago, they're calling the cops. Now it's like, is it illegal or legal? No one even cares anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Nobody cares.
So your plan now is, are you doing any solo shows? Are you planning for that for 2022 or?
I actually have a show in a couple weeks in Soho.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm showing some. That'll be one of them, and then a couple of new pieces I'll be showing in New York.
Wow. I mean, that's a play. Which gallery are you showing that in New York?
That'll be at Black Wall Street Gallery.
Okay. All right. I know it.
That'll be my first time back in front of the actual human interaction. So I'm ready to.
That's what you need. Well, I'm going to get my boys in New York to come by and give you a shout out and see if Bio can drop by there and see you. I'm sure Crash will be there. Are you invited?
Yeah, let Crash know. Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Let's get him down there. I mean, he's. Those guys for me. Him to you is like my Bio to me. Taught me everything. Put me under the wing and got me into the real style of it all. But listen, I'm really grateful for this time. Short but sweet, as I say. And
I appreciate it.
I'm looking forward you to come to bloody Asia and come to the gallery. We have a lot of space there. And maybe 2022, we've got a lot of plans to do a lot of live shows and a lot of tutorial stuff going on there. And we have a great paint room that I'm sure you'll make good use of.
I would put it to great use.
We'll have to find some screens and just get some exposure. And remember, this sun out here is very hot. We'll get that stuff exposed in minutes as opposed to hours.
Right. So.
All right. Well, Mr. McFly, thank you so much for your contribution to the gallery.
Thank you for giving me.
As we proved time and time again, our work was not really a consignment-based thing. We like to buy our art, which we put our money where our mouths are. Excuse the pun. And and that's the difference between Aurum. We like to provide. I'm an artist who's curating with my partner, and we love art. So being on the side of the artist fence, where that's got to change. Because we have it, so we own the art, so we can sit on the art, and we can obviously want to sell the art, but it's great that we can be there and the pressure's off. It's about showing the art, circulating it around. But we thank you, all the staff and all the heads at Aurum Gallery. Thank you so much for your contribution. And I look forward to some of that new work.
Yes, and I thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's great to be in a gallery where I know the art is loved, and I'm not just, a possible dollar to somebody.
Yeah. God bless you, man. I'll speak to you soon, and thank you for your time. I'll get Leon to send you a nice email, and I'm going to hopefully be there in the US later on in the year, and I'll come by and see you. I've never been to Virginia.
It's different.
Okay. All right. I'll see you soon. God bless you, Mr. McFly. Bye-bye.